You might be wondering why, at the end of 2016, I'll be doing a review on a motherboard that is A, an LGA 1150 socket, and B, a board that is now on its way to being considered old as far as PC parts are concerned. Perhaps old is a bit harsh, but it's certainly a few generations behind now and is 2 years old. Well, the reason is that, like many other people, I do not have a budget that is conducive to high-end PC part purchasing, but really wants to get as much performance out of the parts available to me. The Asus Maximus VII formula is the answer to this very problem. However, it is by no means a budget motherboard. The price does match the feature set. What's up guys, and welcome back to another episode of V for Voter with me, your host, Voter. Today, I'll be giving you a closer look at the Asus Maximus VII formula and all the punch that it packs for a board of this price and caliber. Now, one thing to know from the start is that it's not really a budget motherboard, but it is certainly cheaper than the newer Z170 boards on the market right now. It is a board that is jam-packed with value and features that will come in handy when I want to push the limits of my Intel Devil's Canyon i7 4790K. First off, let's start with the physical layout and construct of the board itself. Asus have perfected the art of motherboard component placement, and the Maximus VII is no exception. Each of the 3 primary X16 PCIe slots is spaced apart with a one-time slot, which leads to more than enough space for dual GPU setups, though installing one in the lower slot will obscure some of the connectors, an issue that really won't affect too many users. It must be noted though that the bottom X16 slot only provides ×4 electrical interface, so triple card support is not available on this board. Asus have not included the PCIe lane multiplier to reduce costs, but that is an acceptable cut considering the target market. As this is a Republic of Gamers series motherboard, you would expect to see some high quality materials and some badass aesthetic design decisions implemented into the construction of the board. Although this sturdy RoG armor is aesthetically pleasing and helps to keep the board tidy and stealthy, it is not steel or even military grade, but the armor on the front does assist with keeping dust off the board's components. A big plus in my books, especially if you're somebody that doesn't clean out their system very regularly. As mentioned before, the board does have a backplate, which is steel and helps with stability, but also acts as a heatsink to spread and assist in dissipating the heat generated by the board under load. Stability may not sound like something a motherboard needs, but with the amount of heavy GPUs and CPU coolers out there, some extra strength goes a long way to making sure the board does not flex. It also happens to look totally badass. Even with the RoG armor in place, the overall layout of the Maximus VII formula is nicely done, with most of the buttons, connectors and ports easily accessible and free from any possible obstruction. The only exception is the M.2 slot. Since the motherboard uses Asus's MPCIe Combo 3 card, it is limited to M.2 solid-state drives, which are only 60mm or less in length. Speaking of buttons, at the top rightmost corner of the motherboard, Asus has included reset and power buttons, as well as a 2-digit Q-code LED diagnostics display. The MEM-OK button is located further back near the RAM slots and is fairly easy to reach, even with the motherboard installed in a case. These are buttons that I won't use too often, but if you have an open test bench, these will most likely come in handy. One of the biggest improvements from the predecessor is the cross-chill PWM heatsink that is now an all-copper interior and an aluminium exterior. For all the water coolers out there, this will come as a welcome feature as it uses G1/4 threads, so you can choose what bulbs you want to use. This heatsink is built for water and air cooling, so the board stays nice and cool under load. The DigiPlus VRM boasts an 8-phase power design consisting of NextFET MOSFETs, black wing chokes and 10,000 hour black metallic solid electrolytic capacitors. The 4 DDR3 memory slots are also fed by a dedicated digital 2-phase power design and can support memory frequencies of up to 3300 MHz. That's some high-end speeds for DDR3 memory. This goes back to what I meant when I said I wanted a board that was not as expensive as the new boards, but would allow me to push the performance when overclocking. While we're on the topic of keeping things cool, the Formula 7 has 8 4-pin fan headers strategically and logically placed around the motherboard, which means you won't need any extra fan hubs to control your fans, which is actually an issue that I'm having currently with my existing motherboard and case. Moving around the rear of the board, we see the I/O panel boasting 2 USB 2.0 ports, 6 USB 3.0 ports, 6 audio analog ports, an SPDIF optical out port, single HDMI and one full-size display port, and the dual antenna headers for the wireless Bluetooth Combo 3 module. Curiously, a single PS2 port is included, even though most peripherals are USB these days. We also find the RoG connect and clear CMOS buttons, as well as the surge protected NIC that Asus are calling LAN guard. So let's talk about storage capabilities. To the left of the USB headers are the 10 SATA 6GB per second ports and the 2 SATA Express ports. The second SATA Express port is of great interest as the Z97 chipset natively supports only 10 GB per second SATA Express port. In order to offer consumers a second port, Asus has included an ASMedia ASM106SE chip, so RAID won't be possible between the two connection solutions. As with the Deluxe Edition, even though there are technically 10 SATA 6GB ports and 2 SATA 10GB Express ports, this does not mean you can attach 12 drives to the Maximus 7 formula. Rather, if you do use the bottom SATA Express port, the 2 SATA 6GB ports next to it, the bottom two, will be disabled, whereas using the top SATA Express ports will disable the top 2 SATA ports directly next to it. Of course, using the 6 other SATA ports are not impacted by the use of SATA Express devices. In terms of audio, the Formula 7 has an abundance of hardware and software features. Software is simple and intuitive enough for a beginner to use and test their audio setup, as well as giving the more advanced user some flexibility to tinker with the digital EQ and all the other features. The included Supreme FX 2014 onboard audio controller is very similar to that of the previous Maximus 6 Formula Supreme FX 2013. As with the 2013, this audio controller consists of a Realtek ALC1150 codec, which supports 7.1+2 audio, high quality capacitors, complete isolation of the various audio components from the rest of the motherboard, and even an EMI shield. Rounding off this review, let's talk about the BIOS and overclocking. While there are some minor points of variance between them, the Asus Maximus 7 formula's BIOS is very similar to that of Asus's other high-end Z97 motherboards, though with the usual RoG branding. This means it ships with a BIOS which can be best described as having a split personality. On one half, the easy mode is meant to help first-time users get the most from their equipment without bogging them down with too many buttons and settings they do not need. You can literally hit the auto button and the system will do all the work for you, from setting the multiplier to adjusting the voltage. It'll even run a stability test so that you know that the final overclock is stable and ready to use. Simple. Meanwhile, the other BIOS GUI, the advanced mode, is meant for helping more experienced users squeeze every drop of performance from the motherboard as possible. In conclusion, the result of this review was almost a foregone conclusion from the moment I unpacked the Maximus 7 formula. The reason for this is simple. Asus's motherboard team has nearly perfected the art of board layout, component selection, and BIOS design. 3 elements that need to work in harmony to create a great product. The RoG features top-notch audio, user-friendly BIOS and overclocking, and all the other bells and whistles make this board a top-notch purchase for those looking to upgrade their PC without having to spend large sums of money on the latest Z170 LGA 2011-3 compatible beasts available today. Like I said before, this is by no means a low-budget purchase, but considering the price and the feature set, as well as the minor differences between CPUs these days, I think it's a great upgrade for any gamer or content producer looking to beef up their machine. Thank you so much for joining me for another video, and I hope that this review was clear and informative enough for you. Let me know in the comments below if you agree with me that buying a 2-year-old motherboard is still worth it, or if you think I'm just smoking my socks. Smash the like or dislike button however you see fit, and I will see you guys in the next video.